Thanks, guys, for coming. This is a wonderful audience that we have over here, via webinar and live. So my name is Christian Dye. Some of you have seen me before. I have a financial practice downtown, as well as I do a lecture series with various different institutions like UBC. My guest is Ryan Runte from Sutton Realty. He'll be talking about the real estate component over here. So we're going to talk about some financial planning for new families. Okay. So understanding investments, your best mix, financial future, which is a lot about budgeting and starting right, and real estate tips for success. So the first thing I want to talk about is rich versus poor thinking. And the idea behind this is sometimes we're preset, just like a temperature gauge, as to the way that we think. So I want you to think of a temperature gauge, and I want you to think of it like a thermostat. So if it's set at 72 degrees Fahrenheit, and if you are a very poor thinker, what you end up doing is you start making decisions that are quite poor thinking. So if it was too hot in here, what would happen was the air conditioners would kick in trying to get us back to 72. And if it was too cold in here, the heater would kick in trying to get us back to 72. Does that make sense? Rich and poor thinking are the same thing. If you're a very poor thinker, and let's say, for example, you ought to all of a sudden get a lot of money. Maybe you win the lottery, maybe your parents gift you a lot of money. But the problem is you still are a poor thinker, so you will do things that cause you to eventually lose that money. So a good example of this is lottery winners. The majority of them actually end up in a worse financial situation within 4 to 5 years after they actually win. Why? Even though they had millions of dollars, they were poor thinkers. The opposite would be you have rich thinkers who actually become broke or suffer from a financial crisis. But given enough time, they actually get all of their money back. Why? It's because their thinking, the way they think, was set at a certain level. So it didn't matter the environment, they were always able to make their way back to their rich thinking. So high-income spenders, sometimes they think that they're rich because they have higher income, or you have dual household income. But if they started out and their mentality towards money is very, very poor, what you'll find is that they're working harder and harder over time, but just accumulating more and more debts. And the reason is because they're still poor thinking, even though they have high income. So there's a saying that if you divided up all of the money in the world, over time it would eventually end up in the same pockets. And it's this idea of the poor thinkers, even if they have the money, they will eventually lose it. And the rich thinkers, if they don't have enough of it, they will eventually gain it back. So today's session, I'm actually trying to just adjust your financial thinking. I'm trying to get you to think a little bit more like a rich person and not like a poor person, regardless of what your income is like. Okay? So here's some poor thinking. Avoid the deadly disease of what I like to call affluenza, also known as trying to keep up with the Jones. You know, I always say that Facebook is one of the worst things that could have happened to our society, because now we are constantly comparing with the home that someone else has, the wedding that someone else has, the activities, the children that someone else is in. And because, of course, the internet with Facebook, you're looking at people that you haven't seen for years and years and years. You're comparing yourself to everyone. And we often tend to compare up. We never compare down. We're always comparing to people who have more than us, not less than us. That is mistake number one of poor thinking. So what is the big problems of trying to keep up with the Jones, of course, is the Jones are going broke. Okay? So purchasing or upgrading your liabilities will continue to limit your ability to purchase assets. So one of the things I want to talk about is thinking about how to purchase assets and how to minimize purchasing liabilities. So in structuring your finances, I want you to think of all financial planning as two parts, just like in football. You've got offense and you've got defense. And the important thing is, if you study football, what wins games? Defense. Strong defense always wins games. When I think of defense, I'm thinking of not over-leveraging too much, not overspending too much, paying down loans, paying down debts, and of course protecting yourself through things like insurance. When I think of offense, I think of growing your assets. I think of investments. I think of real estate investments. I think of the stock market. I think of mutual funds and things of that sort. Okay? So I don't want to assume that everybody understands investments, so I'm going to boil it down to our basics. What are some typical investment vehicles? There's RRSP, TFSA, RESP, and non-registered. Okay? Some people know exactly what all these mean, but I'm going to quickly go through them. A stock, a bond, a mutual fund, a GIC, or cash can be put in any one of these baskets. Okay? So an RRSP, of course, is for our retirement. This is a vehicle that allows us a tax credit. If we were to contribute with after-tax money, the growth is tax deferred, and in retirement, we end up withdrawing it and we're taxed. But we technically should be at a lower rate. So is this a good thing? Yes, this is a good thing. A tax-free savings account, a TFSA, is also with after-tax money. But if you invest in a TFSA, it grows tax-free, and when you take it out, it's also tax-free. An RESP is for your kids. Government matches a portion up to 20%. And a non-registered account is a fully taxable account where you would grow money. See, the other alternative is if you're not doing one of these but you do have money, is typically like a savings account, which basically you're making no money because the interest is so incredibly low. So people should never have large chunks of money, let's say $40,000 or $50,000 sitting on the outside for too long. It should be allocated towards something. So when we take a look at a market over here, and a lot of people are afraid of the markets, this is sort of a 50-year snapshot of what the markets look like. They go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. But typically, if you have a good investment strategy, you should be able to ride out any of the dips. And you should also be able to take advantage of the fact that over the long term, they always tend to go up. So a lot of people who are afraid of the markets, they're afraid of mutual funds, they're afraid of stocks and things of that sort. They shouldn't be. Because over time, as long as you're working with a professional, they do show that these things tend to go up. Okay? So trying to understand, what is a person's most important financial priority? Is it the home, RSP, TFSA, and RESP, their insurance, or paying down debts? Which is the one with any extra money that we should be putting towards? The answer is always the same. It depends. Since every single person's scenario is different, it always depends on what we should be doing, okay? So we would want to take a look at things like what's your age, your marital status, kids, your debt load, your goals. Other factors are things like what is your work cover you for pension? Are there other means to get funding for, let's say, a down payment, such as a gift from a parent? So there's a lot of different factors, which is why financial planning is actually very, very important whenever we're looking at things of this sort. So here, real estate. What's happening in the market now and why? Affordability and working with people that you know in specific areas over here. So real estate's always a hot topic because it's one of the areas that if it's done wrong, it can be a very, very devastating effect. So what I want to do over here is take a look. It's 2017 now, we're going into 2018. I'm going to hand it over to Ryan just to talk about some of the things that are going on in the real estate market right now. Is that okay?
Yes, that's good. And then as you click the button,
Welcome to this large crowd.
a little louder.
A little louder. Okay, can you see? So it's been a very interesting last couple of weeks. So the biggest changes have happened just in the last few weeks. So now when you have to qualify under the new stress tests, you have to qualify 2% higher than either the benchmark rate or the posted rate. So 3.24 was what I was told right now is the posted rate. So you're looking at 5.24 that you have to qualify for. So a lot of people are being pushed down about 20% from what they can currently qualify for. So the main thing is to try to get a pre-approval done now before January 1st. So these changes come into effect on January 1st. So most lenders are saying if you get your pre-approval done before the end of the year, they will honor this, but it is up to the lender. If you already have a pre-approval and you buy something and it closes even February, March, there's no cutoff date at this point. So as long as you have an accepted offer, even if it closes in the spring, you're okay. But this is going to have a huge effect on the higher price things, anything over, I would say, $1 million or higher, because those people will be pushed down about 20%. So the mid-range market, I think, will still be busy, like 500,000 to 700,000. Once you start getting $1 million and over, and especially for detached houses, there's going to be some drops. So my prediction is very difficult to say. A lot of buyers right now are obviously rushing to buy because of the changes. Like we've just been slammed the last couple of weeks. People that have been waiting 6 months to a year are just all of a sudden rushing to buy something. So the main thing is to get pre-approved right now with a qualified broker. We have ones that we can recommend, and that for sure by the end of the year. And if you can't afford with the changes of the 20%, that's something to factor in. So most of our clients, to be honest, are maxing out. So I just did a deal where she bought a 2-bedroom for $560, and she was at her absolute max. Come January, she would be pushed down to $400,000. So she couldn't even get the same product. So it's very important to not necessarily max out. So basically the government's implementing these rules to make sure that people can still afford at the higher rate, and a lot of people can't, which is the scary thing. So try to stay within your budget, but definitely talk to a broker before the end of the year. And then my slide. Yeah, so feature outlet. Yeah, effect of the mortgage. Yeah, so the crasher level, that's a difficult one. So I think if you have a detached house, it's going to most likely drop. So anything that's over $1 million, which is pretty much every house, you're going to see a drop because you've taken out a large buyer pool. How much is going to drop is difficult to say. We've got quite a few calls the last couple of weeks, but it's hard to say. I would say there's going to be a correction, but whether it's going to be 20% or 5% or 10%, time will tell in the new year. I think there'll be a little bit of a standoff. Sellers initially probably won't want to take such a big drop, but as the year goes on, if people aren't making offers, then there will be a correction. But what percentage? I would say for houses, probably 10% would be my sort of guesstimate. I think 20% is a little bit high. So a lot of the media is saying 20% correction for the detached houses. I think 10% is probably more accurate, because you do have some entry-level ones that won't be as much of a drop. Condos, I think, actually will still be flat, possible even a few percent gain, just because a lot of people are still going to buy in that mid-range, like 500 to 700,000 range. So the people that are approved for higher are now just pushed down to the middle range, and so still people are still going to purchase. Yes,
I think you gotta go back.
Let's see. Talk about the stress test.
Ryan, I think you have to
Way
go.
too far.
Yeah, you're going ahead. You gotta go backwards.
This one?
All right.
Yeah, so we're talking about that. Yeah, affordable areas. Yeah, what's affordable? I still think that probably like Port Moody and Coquitlam is still undervalued, because the Evergreen line that just came into effect about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, it's still undervalued compared to Burnaby, Vancouver. So I would still look at that for investment. Anywhere close to transit, like is still going up. We bought in the city of Lougheed, for example, so we've been recommending that project because you're close to Evergreen and the regular SkyTrain. So projects that are close to transit and shopping, they typically do well. So I would look at those areas.
What about the rules on the pre-construction in terms of qualifying?
Yes. Yeah, so pre-construction is a good one. So I personally, for pre-construction, you have to be cautious to also implement that you can afford the stress test, because the builders don't qualify you. So you can walk into a pre-sale as long as you have the down payment, which usually adds up to 20% over 6 months to a year. They'll sell it to you. They don't ask if you've been qualified for financing in most cases. Because the projects are 3 to 5 years away, most banks can't hold their rate that long. Or you have to have an in-house broker, it's typically a higher rate, so people won't look until closer to the completion. So you have to be careful with that. There's some good deals if you get in early. So before the public launch, you can get some good deals with pre-sales. But you have to be cautious. What I see happening is a lot of people won't be completing on their pre-sales. So, and the scary thing there is because these people aren't qualified with the stress test. And we have some clients in that boat. So,
But I guess my question is, if they don't qualify, but they bought it, they come to 2021,
yes.
and they don't qualify, they have to sell. Is that what you're
So
saying?
they have to, what we call an assignment. So most builders will let you assign the contract for a fee. So for example, City of Lougheed, where I bought, I can assign the contract to another person, and they charge about 3%, I believe. If you can't assign it, you would most likely just lose your deposit. If they can't resell it or they resell it for a loss, they may go after you for the difference. Typically, what I've seen in the past when I worked for builders, if the market slows down, they'll just keep your deposit. But that deposit is quite a bit, so you have to be cautious.
Yeah. Wow.
So I actually see for pre-sales, there's some good opportunities if you get in before the general public, but I also see opportunities with what's called the assignments. So a lot of people that can't complete, and we have some clients in that boat, they'll have to assign their unit in order not to lose their deposit. So these things can't be, most cases aren't advertised on MLS. They're word of mouth, like Craigslist, realtor websites, stuff like that. But I see every project's going to have a handful of people that can't complete on what they've purchased.
Okay.
So something to keep in mind.
Okay. All right. I can speak towards this.
Yeah, sure.
Is that okay?
Thank you.
All right. So I think because real estate is such a large purchase, a lot of this talk for young families is centering around real estate. So CTV a while back did a report, should you rent or buy, an expert opinion. I still think that their advice back then holds true today. They interviewed people, experts, economists, as well as people in urban land, and they asked them, what is your expert opinion? These were academics at the university level. And they said, if you have savings and a good steady job, you should buy. You should not try to time the market. Their prediction was, because Vancouver is so overinflated, they did think a 20% decline is possible, just not probable. They thought if there is a decline, it would be a soft decline, leveling at around 10%, would be more probable at the most. The problem is, no one really knows. So because no one really knows, we should have declined years ago, but we kept going up. Now, it looks like, and as Ryan said, it looks like we should decline again. But no one knows. Would we be surprised if Vancouver continues to go up? I wouldn't be surprised, because I haven't been surprised for the last 10 years, right? Will we? I think there's a greater chance of us declining in January, February, but I just don't know. I don't know how long that will last, or if that decline will happen at all. But what I try to do with my clients is I try to say, it doesn't matter if it goes up or down. What's more important is, can you actually afford what you're buying? That's what number one says. If you have savings and a good job, you should buy and not trying to time the market, because you're not selling immediately. You're holding for a long period of time. So here are a couple numbers that I'd like to give. I try to say stay around 40% of monthly gross income, 35% would even be better, okay? So what does this number mean over here, okay? So if you calculate your monthly gross income, then calculate the cost of the home. That's utilities, strata, that is mortgage, everything. And if you could try to stay 40% or under, you're in a safer zone. Now the thing is, if you actually run through this math, this is a much harder number than you think it is, because of Vancouver pricing. So usually we see that people are closer to the 50%, maybe even 60% range, where the majority of their money is going towards their housing. And like I said, it's just not the number I would recommend in my financial planning. If you could hit 35% or below, you're a rock star. You're way ahead of the curve, okay? If you're conservative as well, try to keep your mortgage around 3 times household income. Very difficult number to do, because if your household income was $100,000, that means you'd only have a $300,000 mortgage. And then everyone says, well, what can you buy for a $300,000 mortgage? You'd have to have such a large down payment. Like I said, if you are conservative. If you are conservative, because the person who stays at this 3 times household income will have money left over for investments, for vacations, for other areas of their life. If you start to breach and start getting into 4, 5, 6, 7 times, that's where things start to go crazy over here, okay? Statistics came out, what is the average household, not mortgage, but actual house, okay, that people are buying. It's usually a generation ago, it was 3 times household income. Today in Canada, 6 times household income. In Vancouver, 9.8 times household income. So people with $100,000 income in Vancouver are buying a $980,000 house, which is about average, because that's what they could afford, right? Now this doesn't take into fact that our interest rates are much lower, but you got to remember, those are also increasing. Okay, so some housing planning. What are some fundamentals you always want to look for? Schools, transportation, long versus short term. Okay, I usually recommend move to the area that you want to live in eventually, okay, as opposed to moving into an area and then trying to transfer back in. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way. For young families, I always ask, what is the distance to in-laws or other family members? And the reason why I ask is because of the daycare. Daycare is so incredibly expensive. You know, because if you don't have kids yet, by the time you have them and you don't have a plan in place, the plan might be either to not working, which means you've chopped your income, or it might be daycare, and we're going to talk about how expensive daycare is. So, I always say to always run a stress test as well. So when we're looking at a mortgage, try to get pre-approved. If you're within a 6-month window of wanting to buy something, go through the process of getting pre-approved. Why? It doesn't cost anything, it determines affordability, and if the rates rise, you get the lower rate. If the rates fall, you get the lower rate. There are no negatives to pre-approving, okay? What is a stress test? Ryan talked about it a little bit, but the way I do a stress test is I take a look at a couple's actual financials, income and expenses, assets, liabilities, and I check to see, can you actually afford this home based off of your current budget? But then I say, when things start to change, and the two things that will change the most, of course, over a period of time is your expenses will change because of a family, and the rates will change due to renewal. Those are the two things that will affect your housing the most. So a stress test could project to see how much it's going to change over here. All right, what does banks look for pre-approval? Typically they go by your debt service ratio and how much income that you make. So what are some ways that you could improve your credit score? Well, here's some quick tips. One, make all payments on time. So if you have car payments, you have Visa card payments, you have things of that sort, always make them in full on time. The other one, keep your balances, try to keep them under 75% limit. So if you had 2 lines of credit, one is at 10 grand and the other is at 5 grand, and let's say you had 90% of one line of credit was already used up and the other one was only 10%, it would be better to keep both under 75. Apparently, it improves your credit score. Okay? The other one, avoid applying for credit too often. So these are things like when you go into a department store, such as the Bay, and they ask, would you like to sign up for our credit card because you'll get 10% off your first purchase, you're actually taking on more credit. So these are just some quick tips on mortgage pre-approval, but I do recommend if you're in a 6-month proximity of getting a place to get pre-approved, and we have some recommendations of people to pre-approve with as well. Okay? Always work with experienced and trusted people in your area. So here are some mortgage tips. Consider various down payment options in order to enter the market faster. Because the rents here in the Lower Mainland are so expensive, I typically say don't rent for too long. Okay, nothing wrong with renting, but renting for too long, paying high rents, there's a problem. But then you said, well, I don't have a down payment. Let's start to get more creative. Here are some creative ideas. One, just ask family. You'd be surprised how much family might be willing to help you with that down payment to get you from, you know, that 5% down payment or that 10% that you need. Sometimes people will gift this, and sometimes people will just say, I will give this to you, and with intentions that you'll give it back to me later in some form. You might think of minimizing your loan debts. So if you have student loans and you're aggressively putting $2 grand a month towards this, but you're paying $2 grand a month towards your rent, maybe you should minimize the loans for the next 2 years, get into the housing, and then bump the loans back up. Incorporating some mortgage saving strategies. Once you have the mortgage, pre-authorized deductions. So here, this is actually in order to save up for the mortgage. So pre-authorized deductions are things like just setting it up with the bank so that before you can spend the money, it's already being taken off per month. So if you said, we want a down payment in 2 years from now, and it'll take $500 per month for us to do this, set it automatically with the bank. It's a greater chance that it'll actually happen. Cars are so expensive. If the car that you have right now is still okay, you might want to try to keep extending the life of it. If the lease is about to run out of it, you might just let it go because leases are quite expensive, and then potentially just either get much cheaper form of transportation or a used car or something of that sort. Okay? And here's the fastest way. If you even have the opportunity to live at home, you will gain 5 times the amount of savings in as compared to if you were renting. And no, it's not an option for a lot of people, but if it is, you'll be surprised at how fast you get that down payment. So, predictions we talked about a little bit. We all know that interest rates are on the rise, and we also know that housing prices might be affected by this. Okay? So when we're talking about investments over here, again, I talk about rich versus poor thinking. Poor thinkers are always concerned about income, but rich thinkers are actually concerned about income ratio. This is much, much more important. So I'm going to explain what this means. Your income ratio is your expenses divided by your income, and you'll get a percentage. So a lot of people chase income. Which job pays me the most? Which area should I move to in order for me to make more money? They're chasing income. You should always be chasing income ratio. Rich thinkers chase income ratio. And income means, of course, controlling your expenses. That's far more important for wealth than your income. I work with a lot of physicians and dentists. Some of them have income ratios as bad as 98%, even though they make over $400,000 a year. What does that mean? It means they're going to die poor. How could they not? They have no money left over to invest. So what's included in expenses? These are things like mortgage, rent, taxes, your grocery bill. What's not included? Savings, paying back of loans, investments, right? Charitable givings. Those things aren't included over there. So what I do with these budget sheets is I try for my clients to say, what am I attempting to do with your budget? So let's say you had $100,000 of gross household income. What I'm doing over here is I'm trying to allocate the percentages that should be going towards housing, transportation, food and entertainment, debts, and things of that sort. If you want to see, I know it's not easy to see this, but if you were to email me, I'll send you what my recommendations are here. So here, if you had loans, I would aggressively be paying off those loans or debts. If you did not have loans over here, I'm using the same slide, but now I'm reallocating the money because things are constantly changing over here. So if you had loans, I would be putting no more than 20% of your gross income towards, 20% of your net income towards housing. If you had no loans, this number, of course, as I've showed it before, should be 40% or under over here. Okay? So here, trying to figure out some financial planning is trying to figure out, well, instead of worrying about the actual amount of money, worry about the percentages. Where are the percentages going in each of these places over here? Okay. So a lot of young families, of course, are now preparing to have kids. Women are 3 times more stressed than men are in the first year of a baby's life. Mother's financial stress following the birth is larger than the father's, and this was based off of a study out of Melbourne. So over here, some preparation tips in order to have this baby. Stress test your finances before the baby comes. Otherwise, you're going to find that you're on top of the stress of a baby, you're going to have a lot more stress because of the finances. Figure out the expenses that are coming ahead, and you put your financial house in order. Who is going to take care? Are 2 people going to? Are you going to go back to dual income? And if you're not, who's going to take care of the baby? This is a very, very critical thing before you buy the housing as well, because of the proximity. So some things to consider once we start having, once we're pregnant over here. Prenatal care, insurance, housing location. So when I talk about this, the only reason why I mention prenatal care is because often there's quite a bit of waiting list. I know there's a great prenatal care. It's actually one of my clients at babyprep.ca. The only problem is she's got a big wait list. Insurance, you should always do an insurance review because, of course, you now have a dependent. And the housing location, of course, is linked because of the high cost of daycare. So, talking about that, the other crisis, the daycare crisis. Okay, what are the average monthly daycare costs in Canada? See, nobody here has kids on this side anyway. Does anyone know how much daycare costs per child?
I'm guessing a couple thousand.
Okay.
4,000.
Okay. Not that high. Holy cow! I think you've got them in the Waldorf school of daycare. Okay.
It depends how old too, I guess.
Yes, it does. It varies by about $200. Depends if they're an infant or a toddler. But here's some statistics. Edmonton, $835 per month. Newfoundland, $772. Winnipeg, $431. And in Quebec, Montreal, they actually have a government-funded daycare. So it costs them as little as 164. I think in Quebec City it's 152. Okay. What is it in Vancouver? 1,300 a month. That's average. That's average, and that's if you can get on the list, and that's per child. Okay. Toronto is slightly more. So Toronto in our market seems to be similar in real estate, also similar in daycare. So now there's this outcry for daycare costs, but you got to remember, if you haven't even planned for this cost over here, it's coming whether you like it or not. $1,300 per month. So why is the housing piece so important? Because if there is family, or if there is in-laws, or if there's something that could lighten the load, maybe even a couple of days, all we're doing is putting more money back into your pocket over here. Okay, so some things to consider. Is it even worth returning back to work? You know, because it have to overcome this one cost over here. Can family members help a couple days a week? And if you were considering this, you got to remember there are wait lists for these places. They're wait lists. So if it is an option, you're going to have to put yourself on the wait list. Okay. So stress testing these expenses, talking with family, those would be your next steps. Those would be your next steps in preparation. Okay. And of course, financial planning. So don't wing it, which is what a lot of people do. They're just surprised by this cost, and then all of a sudden life is just miserable, right? Because they have to pay for it. They're not sure where the money's coming from. So what I do with a budget sheet is I help my clients in order to figure out what will their expenses look like for the next year. You know, it could be this year, it could be the baby year, it doesn't matter the year. And all they're doing is they're inputting their income at the top, and they're inputting all of their expenses. And the thing is, I'm going to make the assumption that every month is the same, but as the months go, you can start changing them, especially if income fluctuates month to month. All the percentages I've given before are actually allocated for you, so you know how much is going towards housing. It's already pre-slotted. So what I do is I run my clients through this activity so we can start to see what is cash flow. Are you under? Are you over? Come baby time or housing time or renewal time, doesn't matter. What is cash flow and what is your income ratio? So when I have my clients fill this out, I can see right away into their future. I know what's going on. And you'd be shocked at how many people have income ratios of 110%, 105%, or maybe they're at 80%, but after we run through the baby activity, they're suddenly at 105, 110%. And I'm not saying to not do it. I'm saying now we have to do financial planning to figure out how we can minimize that debt, right? So the cash flow is what is incredibly important over here. So now I want us to consider on the defense side, the protection. How long can the average Canadian not work before he goes through all of his savings, loses his $600,000 home to the bank? Okay. The answer is about 1 year. If you can't pay for your house, you have about 90 days before the bank orders a foreclosure upon it. Okay? And typical family has about $20,000 of liquid savings. So here, for a 35-year-old male earning about $50,000 per year, how much is his basic life or living benefit insurance policy cost over here? You know, here, it's if you don't have a disability policy through work, these things aren't that expensive. $43 a month, $15 a month for critical illness. These are just basic amounts. So now, I talk about this because I talk about, there was a young man in my neighborhood, young family, and he was diagnosed with cancer, and he was in the newspaper because they were petitioning to try to help protect him. They said, please donate money to this family because they're in dire need. He did end up passing away from cancer. And off of all of the petitions, off of all of the newspaper ads, off of everyone sending in money, do you know how much they raised for this guy? $18,000. $18,000. Everyone pitching in a little bit. My question is, how far does $18,000 go to a mother with housing with young kids? It will last a few months, maybe just a few months. It is much easier to just take care of these things yourself. So what is an insurance review? When we're buying housing, starting family, having kids, we should always do an insurance review. Because say, when is the positions that I'm going to need money? If I die, I'm going to need money. My family will need money. If I'm disabled, I'll need money. And if I'm critically ill. So then you assess, what does work cover me for right now? Oh, work covers me for a little bit, and work covers me for this and this. And then how much do I currently own? Maybe you have a policy from before. But what we do is we figure out what is the actual need right now, what do you currently have, and what are the shortfalls. and then we would do insurance planning. So especially when you're starting family, especially when you're taking on something as large as a mortgage, you have to take the responsibility to put in some insurance planning, okay? So what is the most important insurance to put into place with a young family? Well, it depends. It depends, of course, on whether you have kids or not. It depends on your health history, how much mortgage you have, and it would also depend, of course, on whether you're married or not, and what work covers you for. So here, if you are single, your disability is probably the most important insurance, okay? Then you move down the ladder of critical illness and life. If you are married with mortgage and kids, life insurance is probably the most important. Then you move down the ladder of disability and critical illness. So why would you put insurance in place sooner rather than later? Because there are three things constantly moving in the wrong direction. One is your age. It keeps getting older every year. The other is your health. Your health is constantly moving in the wrong direction. And the other is the insurance rates. The insurance rates keep going up each year. So what you want to do is when you lock in your rates, you're locking in not only the rates, but also your health status at that time, as well as your age. So 1 in 4 policies are always issued non-standard. So with the large amount of people in this room right now, 25% of you, if you were to apply for an insurance policy right now, 25% of you would not have a standard policy. There would either be an exclusion or a rating or potentially even a decline. So in retirement planning over here, things to consider: total assets, total debts, and your goals. Now the reason why we need assistance is because you basically need a map. And the problem is if you don't have a map towards retirement, the closer you get to retirement, the harder it is to try to achieve your goal. So I want you to think of, you're new to a city, like let's say New York City. You get there and you want to go to the shows, you want to go to your hotel, you want to go to the Statue of Liberty. There's all these things you want to do. What's the very, very first thing that you do? You would get a map, or you would get an app on your phone that has a map, because you're trying to figure out where you're going. What's the alternative if you don't do that as soon as you get to the city? You're wandering around just trying to find these places. The problem is you're going to be wasting a lot of time and you could be headed in the wrong direction. At the end of your trip, you're going to say, I didn't achieve all the things I wanted to do, and I wasted a lot of time and also a lot of money. Financial planning is the same thing. If you don't have a map, you're not really sure, am I on track? You're just guessing. You're just wandering around. So here, projections to see if you're on target, because right now the numbers are staggering how many people are retiring, relying on the government, just relying on CPP or OAS, or just relying on whatever little bits of pension they have, still having no idea. The greatest danger about non-retirement planning is the fact that medicine is getting better and we're living longer. So the problem is that if we're all retiring at the same time, but we're living longer, we might run out. So here's a good case study on pension. This is a financial program that we have where we input a person's situation: married, male, age 35, retiring at age 65, current income $50,000, has about 20 grand in RRSPs. We're going to have a 6% rate of return on future investments, but this person has a pension. Now, when they came to us, they said, am I on track to retire? And the answer was no. You need to beef up by about $191, so about $200. At $200 more a month, at 6% rate of return, based off of your current RSPs and your pension, you'll hit your retirement goal. I'm going to take the exact same guy, but all I'm going to do is take out the pension. 630 is the new number. So now the exact same person without pension now needs to contribute $630 per month towards. Why? Because the pension was making up a significant amount of the retirement planning. So this type of review is important the younger that you are. So here's a quick little case study. Nick the newlywed. Nick is recently married, wanting to start a family soon. He has some debts, no purchased home, but now is dual income. They want to buy a home or an investment property, save for retirement, and prepare for having a baby. Very, very common with young couples in Vancouver. Very, very common. So this is their current option. Buying a pre-construction, it'll be finished in 2020, 3 years from now. They need 20% down, it's $750,000, and they want to live in this. Okay? They're maxing out their RSPs currently. And so right now, They've got combined income of about $150,000, okay? They're renting for about $1,500 per month, and according to my budget sheet, they have about $1,000 per month of cash flow. So this is a couple that's used to having money. If you have $1,000 per month of cash flow, you're used to being able to pay all your bills and still have money left in the bank, okay? And this is a place they want to buy. It's an expensive place, but they feel that there's a good deal in front of them over here, okay? So the $150,000 is made up of some of their savings and also a little bit of gifts from parents, okay? So there's their $150,000. So they could actually qualify to afford this place, but now the question is, should they? So the suggestion always, get a financial plan. Pay for a financial plan. Get a report that says, is what you're doing correct? Are you still on track with all the other areas? So here, the condo, the problem is when you look at these pre-builds, not that I'm against it, but it's just not right for everyone's financial situation. So they're going to look beautiful, obviously. The presentation is going to look beautiful, and you're going to get excited. That's the issue. You're going to get excited. And plus, someone said that you could afford it. Now, this is their current plan, okay? They have no formal plan. They're just guessing. These are the things that they forgot to consider. In the baby years, expenses are going up. Income is going down. $150,000 will be tied up for 3 years. That's the down payment. So the money isn't actually making anything. They don't know what the future rent is going to be, and they also, and this is the big one, they don't know what the future rates are going to be. Okay? So here, with the financial plan, it can help to project, does this make sense for them? Does it make sense doing this pre-build? So now, the things not considered, the current plan. So in my analysis over here, I took a look that, especially working with the people in the mortgage industry, what is the economic and what is their prediction? Well, we all believe the same thing. We don't think rates are going down. We think they're going up. Right now, as of January 1st, they'll be in the neighborhood of low threes. Okay? Will they stay at low threes? That's not the prediction. Slowly over time, they will continue to creep back up. Numbers I've been hearing is between 3.5 and 4.5 in 3 years. Will it happen? I don't know. But there's more of a chance of that happening than a chance of them dipping back into the twos. Okay? So I'm going to use the number 4%. Now, since they're going to have less income because of the baby years, I'm predicting their $1,000 of income based off of my budget sheet will go down to about 100. Only 100 extra per month of cash flow. Housing has now increased from $1,500 a month to close to $4,000 per month. Where are you getting this number from, Christian? At 4%, the mortgage off of a $600,000 place is $3,167. Okay? Plus they got strata. Plus they got utilities. Plus they got taxes. Right? Plus they have extra baby expenses for the housing. So here, I need to take into account all of these numbers. Now, if it was 2017 and we were using 2.7% rates, or 3.2% rates, we're looking at a significant, at least $400 more on that future. So the problem is we can't predict at what the new rate is going to be. So, according to my numbers, if they buy it, this is their plan. If you buy it and you live in it, you'll have $1,500 per month of cash flow per month. $1,500. Why don't we rent it, Christian? Can't we rent it out? There seems to be a lot of people in Vancouver that want to rent these new places out. I would ask them what is the most you could possibly get in rent for that condo in that area. And I predict around $2,000 per month for a new 2-bedroom condo in the area that they were looking. $2,000 is conservative. Okay? They said, okay, it's $2,000 a month, so why don't I rent it out? But now their personal rent would have to gone up. I didn't even let it go up that much, just $1,800 a month because of the new baby. Okay? Went from a 1-bed to a 2-bed. I still calculate $1,300 a month of negative cash flow. Because you got to remember, they're used to paying $1,500 to $1,800, but now they're in it for $4,000, but they could only rent it for $2,000. So does the pre-build make sense for this particular person? The answer is no. Were they about to do it? Yes. Okay. The financial plan helped them to make the decision to say, not do it. But then the question is, well, then what do we do, Christian? All right, the financial plan. What is a financial plan? It's basically working with a planner like myself and figuring out, usually it takes us 3 sessions. We figure out, first of all, what are all the goals. Then that's session 1. Then we do the planning. Okay, I take this information away and I do the planning. And then in the 3rd meeting, we do the implementation. So on this particular case study over here, this was my recommendation. You've got $150,000 of access, right? I'd say first, buy within the next 8 months. Do not keep renting at $1,500 because you guys have dual income, no kids yet. So you'll qualify. I said, but I figured out the number. What is the amount of housing they should buy? I used $500,000. That was what the math told me. They could afford a $500,000, 10% down, that's 50 grand. So out of their 150, I've only used up 50. 3.2% interest rate, which is today's rate, $450,000 mortgage only puts them at $2,000, about $2,100 per month. Plus strata, plus taxes, plus utilities, they could still afford it though. It still keeps them under 25. 25 versus 4,000, right? In the baby years, they're still going to be a little bit short though. They're going to be a little bit short, so let's plan for it. TFSA savings for shortfall, put aside 10 grand. So that when you run short of money, you have a location and there's no fighting between the spouses. You actually have saved up for the shortfall. Investment property, and this is because everyone knows I'm a big real estate guy. I'm a guy who likes to buy multiple real estate properties. I own multiple real estate properties. You know, Ryan has helped me buy some of these real estate properties. I put $70,000 and keep it on this side and wait for an opportunity. What if the market does go down? Then that's where all the opportunities are going to be. That's what a rich guy thinks like. That's rich thinking. Poor person says, let me put all of my money in one basket for something I can't even afford. That's poor thinking. Rich thinking is, okay, I have to do this. I'm buying less. It's obviously not going to be as nice and shiny as that new condo. But look how much extra money I have to do all these other things with. Look at my, I'm ready for the baby years. I'm ready if there's an opportunity in the markets, right? Plus, I still have an emergency fund. What might come up in an emergency? Lots. You're having a baby, right? You suddenly need things. Cars break down. You know, there's emergencies all the time. But what I'm basically doing in my financial planning is I'm saying, what is the best usage of 150 grand? Because right now what you want to do is you want to put it all into this one investment. I want to say, let's look at another alternative. And even then, they could still get the pre-build. If they really, really want the pre-build, they can do it. But at least they have my recommendation. They have all of the information now. So why would I recommend this scenario? 1, buy right away because you're burning a lot in rent and you already qualify and you guys are good dual income and you've got a down payment. So stop renting. It'll build the equity sooner and you at least know what the rates are today. So with my help, you'll be able to figure out whether we can afford this place or not, okay? You've got money left over for investment property just in case the market does turn downward. If it does turn downward, then you're ready to go buy something else. And of course, the emergency fund in the baby years, right? So what we're having over here is a well-designed, prepared life over here. So this one over here decided to pull up. You might say, yeah, Christian, but 70 grand for investment property, what's out there? What's out there? First of all, rich thinker, get out of Vancouver state of mind. Okay, get out of Vancouver state of mind. So I'm going to quickly get everyone out of Vancouver state of mind. I get my clients out of Vancouver state of mind really quickly, okay? This is an investment property, 200 grand. 200 grand, it's a house with land. I'll tell you now, it's not in Vancouver either. 2,200 square feet, and it's got a suite. Now, here's what I want to point out. Combined rental income for up and down, $1,700 a month. $1,700 a month. Get out of Vancouver state of mind. Because people think, oh, what can I buy for that? What can I buy for that? And the other thing, you know what a down payment on a $200,000 place is? 20% down, right? That's 40 grand. That's only 40 grand, right? And then you said, oh, this is impossible. Yeah, when did you get this, Christian? When did you get this? So I thought I time-stamped the date. September 2017. This was last month. But I'm not telling you guys where this is, by the way. You got to be a client to do that. So, is it possible that there's something else out there? Yes. Is it possible we can still buy our own place? Yes. But we have to start thinking like a rich person. Don't think like a poor person. Don't be stuck in the Vancouver state of mind that says, you know, these completely unaffordable places, so I got to jump on the bullet train because everybody else is. You don't have to. I want you to buy. I buy in Vancouver. My home's in Vancouver, right? The only issue is I got to be able to afford my home, so I have enough money left over so I can do other things with it. Okay. So consider this. These are the dangers over here. So the first one is on a $400,000 mortgage. If you were to just if you were to pay a little bit extra each week, $64 bi-weekly, how much would you save in interest? So this is my idea of when you guys do buy, and I know there's some people in the room right now that are going to buy soon, whatever the mortgage says, round up. Round up. Because it's a little bit each over time. Okay? So if somebody says you owe $1,600 or $1,800 a month in mortgage, round up to $2,000. Just a nice little $2,000. You'd be shocked at how much you save in interest. This one over here, saving $46,000 in interest. Okay, when you round up. Well, never pay monthly. Always pay bi-weekly or weekly. Okay, you can't charge interest off of money that's already been paid off. If you have cars, same thing. If you're paying for your car monthly, talk to the dealership, talk to the bank. Say, I just want to pay it weekly. Okay, I owe $400 a month on my car. Pay $100 a week. It's still the same $400, but now you're chopping the interest. This is what I find is the most dangerous thing that people are subject to in Vancouver. We don't know what the rates will be upon renewal. Right now, and it's funny, I've given this talk with Ryan before, and we were talking 2.5% interest rates. We were talking at one point like 2.3. But now we're at more like 3.2. But here I put it at 3%. If you have a 5-year fixed term at 3%, the problem is you don't know what it's going to renew at in 5 years. So with my clients, we always do a stress test. And here's the stress test. If it was 4, 5, 6, or 7% upon renewal, how much more do I got to pay to stay in my house so the bank doesn't kick me out? 1 point difference is almost $200. 2 points, $385. 3 points, $563, and 4 points, $808. Why did I highlight $593? It's because I usually say the best way to do a stress test is double the interest rate that you're locking in at. If current rates are at 3.2, see if you could handle a 6.4. That's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario, can I handle a 6.4? That means when you renew in 5 years from now, we calculate what would it be if I renew at 6.4. Can I still stay in my house? If your income is going up, great, maybe you can. If you're contributing an extra $1,000 towards your RRSPs, you can afford that. You're just shifting your money from the RRSPs. But if you're right at the limit, living paycheck to paycheck, where's this money going to come from, right? So I show this graph over here. What is, you might say that you think that the interest rates are going to stay low. What is the 70-year average of Canadian interest rates? 7.5. That's the average. The high was in 1981 at 22.75 when everyone was losing their home. And the lowest it's ever been was 2.25, which actually wasn't even that long ago, right? So one thing we know about the rates, they're slowly going to be shifting up. I don't think we'll ever see a 22.75 again. I think we'll see a 6 though. In our lifetime, I do think we'll see a 6. So, my clients, how do my clients tend to utilize me? A financial plan answers these types of questions. How much house should I buy? Where should I start investing? How do I maximize for tax efficiency? Am I on track for retirement? What insurance do I need to put in place? These are the types of things that I try to do. These are the questions I try to solve. And so one of the things that I try to solve these things, and I try to continue to get my clients to learn from me, is through financial articles or webinars. Okay, so I do have a Facebook page as well as a Twitter. But what I often do is I invite many people to listen in. Listen in because it's great information. If you want my help further, then we could talk about either doing some planning together, or insurance planning, or investment planning. So what I in closing over here, what are some things that I personally can help you with over here? I can listen to your financial issues. I could help you implement any sort of insurance, investment, or financial planning. I could also continue to help you out my workshops over here. So I've got my name, my email over here. So some of the things that I'm just a little bit different than other people is I'm a little bit more concerned about educating everyone. I just want to educate everyone to make sure that they don't make any mistakes. That's what's most important to me. And even if you're not my client, that's okay. Listen to the talks, listen to the webinars, go to my website. I've got a lot of different talks on my website over here at latitude-west.ca. Take a look at the video page. There's a lot of different talks that I feel that are going to help you over here. So what I want to do over here in my my remaining time over here is I want to field questions. I want to see if there's any questions either for Ryan or I. And was there anything that I have spoken about that anyone has any questions on? So I'm opening up to questions to this large audience over here. Yes. In the back row, and anyone over there. Yeah.
I did have a
Yeah,
question
yeah,
about
please.
the example that you had.
Which one?
The one with his case study with how they purchased
Yes.
a home with the 10%.
Yep.
Is that is that recommended then to just do 10%? I thought normally it's 20% for the
Okay.
down payment.
It depends. So the question is, should you be putting 10% down on your own personal property? The minimum is 5%, but of course 20%. Anything less than 20%, of course, you have CMHC. So that means you have this extra money. So my background's in math. So what I do is I quickly check mathematically, does it make more sense? And here are the moving variables. What are you renting for? You see, because I know rent is the sunk cost. That's going to keep flowing out. And the two numbers that I know for sure are how much you are spending in rent by delaying. So if somebody said, Christian, I have 10%, but I want to save up 20%, right? I would say, how long will this take us to do? If you have that answer, great. If you don't, I'll figure it out. He said, oh, I'm shoveling another $300 a month. I can figure out how long it'll take you to get that other 10%. But let's say it'll take you another 2 years to get that other 10%, okay? And let's say you're renting for $1,800 a month. I'll go 1,800 times by 2 times by 12. That's for sure how much you've lost in rent. Then I'll also calculate, and this one is a variable. I don't know if I'm going to be right. How much has the place that you can purchase right now for 10% down, how much will it have increased in 2 years? Let's just say that increases by another $30,000, okay? Now I got to take the extra $30,000 that you got to pay, plus the lost rent that you've been paying over here, and then I'm going to compare it against CMHC. How much is CMHC going to bill me? And I'll compare these two numbers. And remember, CMHC could roll into the mortgage anyway. So then I would say, I wouldn't tell you what to do. I never tell my clients what to do. I just teach them the options. Option 1, buy now and put 10% down. Option 2, wait till I have 20%. And let's take a look to see what I feel the ramifications are going to be. And then if they ask me what a lot of my clients ask me, it says, Christian, you showed me it, you told me not that you're not going to tell me what to do. But the thing they often say is, if you were me, what would you do? And then I would give them my honest opinion. Then they would take that information, they would make a decision. 9 times out of 10, their decision always works out because usually I'm using an analytical, not an emotional piece to it. Okay? Of course, that brand new condo looks beautiful. Of course, I want to live in it. That thing looks amazing, right? The views and everything. But I'm not an emotional guy. You can ask my wife that. Not an emotional guy. I'm more about the numbers. Which one makes more sense? If you take a look at some of the places that Ryan has helped me to buy in the past, it's not in the sexy downtown Vancouver. It's in the valley. It's in Chilliwack. You know, it's in some of the places where you might say, oh, why would you buy there? Well, look at it now. You know, we knew that these places were going, and we knew the values of that. We knew that they were undervalued. That's the way a rich thinker would think. Rich thinker thinks, where is it undervalued? So we look at 2 places. Where do we think the value is, and what does the cash flow look like? In Vancouver, it's almost impossible to cash flow. So sometimes I do recommend to clients to invest in properties that are not cash flowing, but they're close. Maybe minus 200, but never minus 1,300. No, it's too much. You're bleeding too much. Even if you were a minus 200 on a cash flow, but let's think about it. What happens over time with rent? Goes up. What happens over time with mortgage? Goes down because someone's paying it down. Rent is always being pushed up, mortgage is always pushed down. If you're like minus 200, let's say minus 300, within 5 years you'll be break even or positive. That I can handle. Because you might say, Christian, by the way, I want to invest in a property and I also need to put away for my RSPs. Here's $600 a month for my RSPs. I might say, let's call it 400 and the 200 shortfall shifted towards that nice property that we found, right? That where you're a little bit low, where you're a little bit light on. Because the nice thing about real estate is it's actual land. Land always goes up over time, or condo, like the value of it always goes up over time, okay? So the quick answer is it depends. If you gave me more numbers, I would say this one makes sense for you or it doesn't make sense for you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Very good question. Is there any other questions?
Quick question.
Yes.
When considering a down payment, is it advisable to touch the RRSPs at all?
Sure. The question is, should we be using our RRSP in order to put as a down payment? And the answer is, we already know my answer. It depends. Like for example, do you have pension from work? If you have pension from work, a pension is an RRSP, right? That is an RRSP. An RRSP is a self-funded pension. So if you said, me and my spouse both have pensions from work, okay? And I'd even look even further into the future. And we're also only children. And we're probably going to inherit our parents' homes or things of that sort. And our parents do have money. Then I say, your retirement is looking safer than you think. Safer than you think. But let's say you got no pension, okay? And you're on your own. Your parents are, there just isn't going to be that passage of money. Then that RSP might be very, very, very important. So when you take money from your RSPs to put towards your home, it might make sense. But remember, you have to pay the money back into RSPs. First of all, do you even have the cash flow in order to pay it back? Or is that again another, let's just wing it and hope we do? Well, if you don't, remember, you have a time frame. The money's not growing while the money's on the outside either. So now you're taking from your retirement in order to put into your home. So the answer isn't no, the answer is it depends. So for some people, it does make sense. Especially if they've aggressively put towards their RSPs for many, many, many years. So that actually is the bulk of their down payments. So we have $100,000 in RSPs. We have nothing in TFSAs. We have no savings. We're renting for $2,000 a month. And both of us work for BC Hydro and we've got pensions. I'd say take it from the RSPs. I'd say you're going to be on the outside too long. You're starting from scratch. I said you're going to be on the outside forever. So it depends with each case over here, but that's why I always encourage more planning. Because when people make the wrong decision, like that case study I said of the pre-build over here, if they actually went through with that, the option that I didn't say, they only have one option. Only one option. That's to assign it or to sell it upon sale. And that was only relying on one factor, that Vancouver continues to go up. And you got to remember, in our history, Christian, Vancouver's always tended to go up. Yes, from 2009 to 2017. But if we were in 2008 and you were completing on the Woodward's building in downtown Vancouver completed in 2008. And it went down heavily with the financial crash. Everyone who got stuck with a Woodward's building in 2008 could not sell unless they were selling at a loss. That was a pre-build, pre-construction, completed in the year of the crash. The other reason why I'm always scared of the crash is this. In that economic graph that I gave you where it goes up, down, up, down, up, down, it always goes up and then it always goes down or corrects and then it goes back up, but it takes years, right? How many years between each of the down markets? Does anyone know on average? 8 to 10. Oh, has it ever had a 15-year run? No. 20-year run? No. 8 to 10. Okay? Let's do the math, people. When was the last crash? 08.
9 years ago.
08.
Yeah.
What year is it now? 2017. What's 2017 minus 2008? 9 years. Where are we in the cycle? At the end. Oh, it might just keep going up, Christian, for another 15 years, or another 3 or 4 years. Well, it's never done that in a 100-year history, but you think it's suddenly going to do that now? We're at the end of a cycle right now. We don't know what it'll look like. Who's going to make money in the cycle? The guy with the $70,000 of cash on the side. because we don't know where the opportunities are going to be inside that crash. It could be in real estate, it could be in the markets, we're not sure. That's how the rich thinker is thinking. That's how the rich thinker is thinking. So I don't know what's going to happen, but right now I know me personally, I own several properties and I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing anything. I'm holding tight. If I do anything, I'm subject to all of these mortgage rules. I'm subject to everything myself, right? So what I want to do is I just want to hold tight and see what happens. And I want to get some cash ready on the side, which I do have, just in case there is some movement. There's a greater chance of there being downward movement than there is of being upward movement. I don't know what's going to happen. The Vancouver market is very unpredictable. Stock market is very unpredictable. So I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not going to say I know what's going to happen. But I do know from a probability perspective, we have a greater chance of things going down than we have going up in the next 3 years. There's a greater chance of it going down than it going up in the next 3 years. So what I'd rather do is, for my young clients, don't try to time the market. If you're paying a lot in rent, if you've got a down payment and you've got a good job, buy. Just make sure you can afford what you're buying. And make sure you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. Is that all right? Is there another question? Okay.
So, sorry,
yes,
a
yes,
follow-up
please
question.
go.
To your point about, I guess, investing in a pre-sale, because maybe that was one of our potential options.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's not advisable to maybe invest in that to try to get a profit to, somewhere down the line, reassigning it after a couple of years.
Okay.
It sounds like it's,
Remember, it depends. Because if the talk that I gave, if I've given this talk every single year for the last 8 years, then everyone who did not buy a pre-sale lost money. Every single person who bought a pre-sale for the last 8 years, reassigned or resold, made money, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands. Okay? I don't claim to know what's going to happen with the market. I'm not saying a pre-sale is the wrong thing. I'm saying that I would look at all of your options to compare it. See, my option is a conservative option because I'm a conservative guy. So I didn't say don't buy. I'm saying in your case scenario, you have got 3 things that are going to happen. You're going to live in it. You're going to be down $1,500 a month. You're going to rent it. You're going to be down $1,300 a month. But the third option I didn't write is you could sell it and make money. But the thing is that I'm gambling on something that I don't know if it's going to happen. I know the other 2 is going to happen, but I don't know if the third one's going to happen, so I'd rather not even put it on. But it might. You might actually do that. But it's the same idea of relying on the one case scenario that this is going to be up in value. I will be able to reassign it. And if the rules don't change, okay, the rules might change. Ryan might even say that. Maybe the rules have changed. You can't reassign it. Or so you're really relying on I can sell it. But the idea, this is my thing. If you could sell it for a profit in 3 years from now, then if you bought the $500,000 place, stopped renting, and lived in it, if that guy went up in profit, so did this one. They would have both went up. But this one over here means I get to stop renting. I get all of the capital gain come year 3. So for me, it would just be safer bet. I know exactly what I'm getting. I also know the rate, 3.2. I'm not happy with 3.2, but at least I know what it is. I've sat down, I've ran all the numbers, so it's just a safer thing. Now, the other guy who says, don't listen to Christian and get it, that guy might make an extra $100,000 over you. He might absolutely do that, right? But in my opinion, it's the same thing as this guy going, this guy putting some money in the markets and saying, oh, Christian said to don't invest heavily in the markets. We're at the end of the cycle. This guy invests in Bitcoin or Yahoo or something. This guy makes hundreds of thousands. Yeah, he might. He might. But the thing is, the types of financial planning I'm doing is that if you live your life constantly betting on that, you'll eventually get burned. Every single year I'm going to bet on something that's got a big upswing and a big downswing. Eventually you get burned. So me, I'm safe. I'm like conservative. I'm way more concerned about cash flow than I am about capital appreciation. Capital appreciation is just bonus to me, but I'm more worried about what is the reality of the cash flow over here. And I got to make sure I don't get myself in too much trouble. And the reason why I personally can't get myself in too much trouble, if the rates go and they increase too much, I have 5 properties. That means I get dinged 5 times. If cash flow goes in the wrong direction, and I'm a little bit in the negative on each property, it's like I'm in a boxing rink with 5 guys in the rink, right? So I got to be very, very careful, so I'm very, very conservative. But the thing is, all of my assets have grown slowly over time because I got time on my hands, and so do all my young clients. All my young clients have time on their hands. So I said, do the conservative things and grow the wealth conservatively, because what you'll find is that if you do it right, it actually won't grow linearly. It'll grow exponentially. It'll hit a point where there's suddenly this big spike. Why? You've got all this equity, and at no point did you endanger your finances for your family. And the thing is, I lived through that, so I know what it's like to lose a home. I know what it's like to be negative debt. I know what it's like. I was a kid, but I know what that family is like, right? So what I do over here is everything that I do, I've also seen the really, really, really wonderful growth that could happen by doing good financial planning, yet still being conservative in some ways. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. This has been great. I think, yeah, I'm going to leave this up over.
What was your biggest takeaway from the lesson today?
Okay, I can go. I guess just a better understanding of the overall financial plan and what it actually looks like, and that's very beneficial for us right now at this point in our lives, because we're thinking about getting a place. You know, we're getting married next year, so we want to plan for all of that effectively and efficiently. So I think Christian really delivered on a few key messages that we'll definitely take away and consider.
What did you like most about Christian's teaching style?
I think he said it right there in one of his slides, actually. He's more concerned about educating his clients and the people that he's speaking to. So that was a really impactful thing for myself. It's the whole education component. Not a lot of people our age, I think, know stuff about financial planning or what that would look like or what it entails. So I think Christian was able to summarize it in a way that it's easy to understand and digest. And I think that was really much appreciated and valuable for us too.